In this video, I'm going to walk through the steps we take with our data to complete Lab 7. Now, remember that last week we went through steps with your data. In other words, we took your observations and turned them into a shapefile and generated data about those locations in the form of neighborhoods you created. And you also made some calculations from your observations, like getting percentages, different concentrations, and things like that. And those ultimately are going to wrap into the first part, the first deliverable for Lab 7. That first deliverable is a study of your study area. So where is it? What did you observe? Anything interesting about the observations you took that don't really show up in the data table are always kind of worth thinking about, if not mentioning. And then in your what you're asked to produce graphically is a map of that study area. So the way I would think about it is think about that graphical object and also consider things like those different concentrations. So the summary statistics that you got, like what percentage retail, those things end up on the map in different colors and you can report them as well. And then the summary statistics that you calculate from census data. So you have this sort of snapshot of your neighborhood. You can think of it as a deep dive. I think I refer to it as a, do I call it a deep dive? Anyway, there are different ways of characterizing what we're doing, but you're going to be able to write, oh, I think a thick description of that neighborhood and what you've observed about businesses there. That's fundamentally what we're able to produce from what we did last week. Then what we did was we compiled our data from last week into this spreadsheet. And I want to point out a couple things about this spreadsheet. Namely, each of you is supposed to be able to produce a measure for each of these questions. If you have any problems producing them, let me know. And then the most important thing, in addition to your responses to these questions, these will be quite interesting and helpful as well, ultimately. But in addition to those, the calculations here are kind of important. I just want to point out that properly constructed, your percentages should look like this. So percent retail is this column, total number of retail establishments divided by this column, which gives you this column. So it should be in the form of a number between 0 and 1, so a decimal representing a fraction, namely a percentage. So 0.03 in this case means 3% of the business establishments are retail. If your columns don't look like that, you should correct them. So for example here, not naming any names, 23.33 is probably 23%. I don't know, 8 divided by, or 7 divided by 30, about 23%. But I don't know, it looks like maybe you multiplied the result by 100. So this should be a number between, all of these should, between 0 and 1. If you have any questions about that, let me know. The other thing I wanted to point out is when you get to the census observations, these numbers are the sum of the number of people in the census tracts in your neighborhood. These all look credible, I think. There's no need for any formatting like commas. Decimal places are essential. And this, so for example here, I think this comma you might get rid of, and this, is that a comma or a decimal place? I can't tell. Total area is the sum of the areas in all of your census tracts. Those areas should be gathered by using the ALAND10 field, which will report the area of each tract. And so here we'll have the sum of the areas of each tract in your neighborhood in square meters. So that should be a really big number. So check yours and make sure it is. For example, here this says feet, so I'm immediately suspicious. I'd check that number. And don't report the units. This whole column we'll just take for granted is square meters. Income, likewise, no formatting, please. Just get rid of the $sign. Excel likes to do that. It confuses ARC. If you have any missing values, please add them. And if you have any questions about what I've said, so here are a couple more places where you might want to check your formatting. If you have any questions about any of this, this is our very first step this week, so please take care of it just as soon as you can.